Welcome back to our channel. My name is Vitali with inHom Senior Care. So, for over 20 years, um, I've run a home care company where we provide personalized one-on-one services for seniors who wish to age in the comfort of their own home. Um, and so, a big part of that is actually helping family caregivers just understand their role better, help them to do a great job of caring and kind of looking at that kind of the mix and the um, just the balance of like how much to help and how much to allow the person and how much to get involved. And so today I wanted to do a video about how to talk to your aging parents about care. And so it's one of those things that sometimes can kind of sneak up on people where, with just looking in a rearview mirror with Christmas and Thanksgiving behind us, those are the holidays when people get together. A lot of times there is and just kind of the realization that things are maybe not as good as we thought they were with mom, with dad. What do we do? Like, how do we maybe help with this? And so today I want to just um, give you a couple of things. So at the end of the video, I'll share with you a link to be able to get our complete guide for how to do this, how to talk to your parents, because we have it really spelled out with just the amount of information that's there. I can't really get into all of it on the video, but I do want to kind of touch on the high level aspect of where we go with this. And so um, uh, understand this: vast majority, almost 100%, I'd say maybe high 90% of the clients who we start services for are not really necessarily on board with having someone come in and help them in their own home, right? They feel that it's maybe an overreach by their kids who are trying too hard to keep them safe, and they're kind of okay, but the kids are insisting, and so they're kind of going along with it. And so there's a lot in that, because what really is happening is that person probably is a little bit fearful of the unknown. Like, well, what's home care? How is this going to work? How is this person? Who is going to come to my house? Is it who's this caregiver? Like, how is that going to work? Are they going to tell me what to do in my own home? Like, it's just sounds and feels awkward because there's no way to there's no way to picture that necessarily until it starts. And so usually there's a window of about 2 weeks or so where once the care starts, then you have a person, that comes in and it's actually doing the care. And so there is a connection that builds, and then they get to kind of see, well, they're helping me with changing my linens, they're helping with my laundry, or they run to the store and help me get some things. And maybe it's more than that. Maybe the trigger is like bathing or personal care related. But the point being, the person, the client, the senior that we're serving now has an ability to kind of understand and appreciate, but more than anything, they've actually connected with a human being who is a caregiver, and now there's a trust that builds there. And so all of a sudden, all of that makes sense. But before they got there, there was some friction within the family to, between the kids who are saying, hey mom, you need more, you need help. There, you just can't keep up with what you've been doing. And that can feel, to the person, can feel, a little bit insulting. So my hope today is just to give you a few tools to have that conversation in a way that is productive, loving, and kind, and allows you as the caregiver to balance that role between what it is that you're going to do versus maybe some of the things that you're going to bring in professional help for. And so again, a lot of times people assume because of the services that we provide that, the people that we serve, they just don't have anybody. They don't have family, and that's why they're getting, they're hiring help, they're hiring care. But it's really not the reality. Vast majority of our clients have very involved, very loving families who use us as an extension of their own caregiving, and do a much better job of it because we're the professionals and we can come in and do some of that heavy lifting to allow the daughter to come in and frankly be the daughter and enjoy a cup of coffee and enjoy a conversation, because sometimes in that busyness of life and having to run their own household and having to manage appointments and picking up prescriptions and running to get groceries, sometimes the busyness of that really takes away from the ability to just sit down and just be together. And I think we've all been there and can kind of relate to that on different on different levels, whether it's senior care or other issues going on. So number one, how do you talk to your aging parents about care? Well, number one, I'd say is to start early if you can, right? So hopefully for some of you, you're not at that precipice where like it's dire, we need to do something now. Hopefully you're kind of being proactive and you can have some conversations, because number one, you have to build trust, right? Because so you're going to end up having to help with these things, because at some point it's either going to happen as a crisis situation down the road, or if you can be ahead, you can have some conversations and you can develop the trust. Because look, in America, in our society, there's lots of things that are not polite conversation, right? So like we don't really talk about finances with one another. We don't talk about how much money we have, how we're doing. That's just not something. We talk about the weather, we talk about the sports, but some of those conversations, whether it's finances or hey, what if at some point you need actual care to help you take a shower safely, like some of those conversations you can't just like blurt it out. You have to get to the point where the trust is built to where you've kind of eased your way into that conversation. So that's trust, is to talk about, hey, I care for you. I really want to see you do really well and age in your own space, and you've done phenomenally well. But I would feel terrible if we didn't talk about this and didn't have somewhat of an idea what your expectations are and what I can realistically maybe help and do for you, and then like try to come up with a little bit of a plan together. So that conversation may go of a couple of different ways. They may welcome it and say, hey, oh, that's great, I'm glad you brought it up, it's been something on my mind, I just haven't really triggered it, or I didn't know how to approach you about it. Or it can go kind of cold, and the person may say, you know what, don't worry about it, I'm fine, I don't need any help, I'm doing good, right? And so be careful there, because if that's the response, sometimes your reaction may be to, hey, I'm trying to help, and so maybe a little bit of an anger type of a response because you're trying and you're getting shut down for that. So I would say just be patient, and two things: understand that you need to build that trust. So that conversation is going to have to happen more than once, right? With just different approaches and just saying, hey, again, and I'm not trying to intrude into your life, but I want to help. I want to make sure that, if at some point I have to help make a decision, I want to know what your wishes are. I want to know how you look at these things, how you think about them. And then number two, even if the response you get is not a positive one because the person is kind of shut down, they just don't want to have this conversation, know that whatever you say is still entering into their consciousness, right? So that you may feel like you got nowhere in that conversation, but you're planting seeds. Some of us who have raised teenagers, sometimes you kind of think about that, like, do they even hear what they seem to be opposed to everything, right? But sometimes later in life you come back, or they come back, and you're surprised at what comes out of their mouth, because they do remember some of those conversations you had. I think this is similar, so obviously those roles are reversing a little bit. The challenge with all of this is that as the adult child, sometimes, so if you talk to your parents and you ask, what's your plan, right? Because we all plan things, but care is not something that we plan for. It just is not a fun thing to plan. So people plan their retirement, they plan vacations, they plan about travel or things they want to do. But a lot of times, in terms of like, okay, unless I get hit by a bus, I'm probably going to need a caregiver one day. It's just the reality of life, right? We start out life fully dependent as little babies, and we end our life fully dependent on someone else to help us. And we can either be annoyed by that and just think that's the worst thing possible, or just realize that is actually a beautiful thing, that within the human experience and within what God designed for us, it is a amazing thing that human beings care for one another, right? And all the ugliness in the world and things that go on that, you know, make us wonder why things are so dark. This is one of these things that is actually a beautiful thing. And so it actually makes me think of a quote that I believe Zig Ziglar either popularized or he came out with, but it says this. It says that spend time with those you love, because one day either you will say either I'm glad I did or I wish I had, right? So think about that. So caregiving is one of those things. So when we raise our kids, there's, you know, amazing things that we have from that. There's struggles and there's things. And so here in the senior care space, it's similar. There's going to be amazing connection and relationship deepening as we talk about vulnerability and someone needing care, and maybe even hospice, to where a person is preparing to enter into eternity. um, and there's a depth to that that's amazing and beautiful, and there's also sadness, and so there's both sides. So when you think about that quote, for me it's been a driver of daily thinking about how am I interacting about with people that are in my life, whether it's my family or friends. And if I at some point look back, am I going to have a a good feeling that I spent time with the people that mattered to me and I'm glad I did, versus am I going to have regrets that I wish I had done some of those things differently? I wish I would have spent more time, right? There's always this thing people always say, nobody ever, on their deathbed wishes that they had spent more time working. Work is something we need to do, and hopefully the work we get to do is amazing and something that makes a difference. But anyway, so with this idea, think about the conversation you're having as trust building, relationship building, and planting seeds that you're not going to get very far with a single conversation to bring about the person to say, okay, you got it, let's figure this out, let's write it out. And it's not that simple. A lot of people don't spend time really thinking about what's important to me, and there's a lot of depth to it. So not only what are the wishes, but also what are the realistic wishes, right? Because cost is always a factor. What's covered by what? You probably need to do a little bit of research and figuring out what's the realistic possibility of this plan or that plan. So most people that we know, from the research and the information, is that most people wish to age to the end of their own home if it's possible. And so there's a lot of information out there, and it's truly possible, but there you do need to have a plan and you need to kind of have a contingency. But there's also the cost considerations, and every care level or care approach is going to have its own cost structure. And so understanding what the resources are in terms of finances, if there's long-term care insurance that's available, how is some of that going to work? So those are all part of the conversation. But the biggest thing about this conversation is that um, keep keep their emotions in mind when you have this conversation, right? Because people say things that sometimes are not the true statement, but they're an expression of their emotion. So sometimes the angry outburst is just the fear that the person has about even think like, I don't even want to think about that, right? I don't want to think about, you know, if I may need help showering where I can't do it on my own, or somebody has to be in my house and helping me with those things. So sometimes people just need time to process that. So you might have brought something up and like, oh man, I haven't thought about that. I don't know. I don't even really want to think about it. But then when we have time on our own, we process and we go, well, maybe that wasn't the best response. Maybe I do need to really actually think about it and have that conversation. So Part of that, sometimes they have a plan, right? Sometimes they have a plan, and you might be the plan. They didn't tell you that, but you might be the plan, as they intended for you to be the caregiver. And however that was going to work out. And that's why these conversations are so important, because um, you need clarity at least, right? You may not necessarily see eye to eye. You may not agree. And so one of the biggest challenges that people deal with is like, well, what's the trigger? When is it time to actually get care in place? And my answer to that is that there's not a magical moment, right? For us as a company, we get clients that come into our care either after a crisis situation. So maybe they've had a fall, maybe they've had a fracture, and they've gone through rehab, they're coming back home, but their ability to function on their own is really diminished. And so they're going to need some sort of an ongoing assistance as they're back in the home. And so that's one way that we get clients on services with us. The other way is sort of the opposite. It's the family that has maybe had some conversations, has kind of looked at saying, okay, um, there isn't a magical trigger for, okay, this happened, we're going to start care. But like taking a shower alone, there's a risk factor, right? There could be a fall, and falls are always very challenging for anybody, but especially for seniors with just the aging of the body and the brittle bones, and so a young person that falls is probably going to be okay. Somebody in their 80s that falls will probably have a fracture. So those are just kind of things. So not that you can, put somebody in bubble wrap and prevent them from any injury, but I look at the services that a family like that would get in place and say, well, let's just have somebody come a couple of days a week and help out a little bit with these things and these things. So it's going to take some things off of my plate as the son or the daughter, and it's going to have a person there, and it's going to not only provide some basic need assistance in the home, but it's also going to provide a relationship and a connection, which is that companionship is such an important part. What a lot of times people don't realize is the senior, the older person, is losing friends, right? Their friends are dying. Sometimes they're being moved away to be closer to family. They're going into facilities, and so their social circle is shrinking. They have less interaction, and so the interaction with family is a little bit more obligatory, right? So, and that's felt. We know that, like we understand that when people come because they're obligated, their family, and they're concerned for us, versus someone who's there that's just appreciates our company and wants to be there. And caregivers, even though initially you kind of go, that doesn't make any sense, when a caregiver, that relationship is built, they really fall into that category. They become more of a friend to them, and like even making a meal, part of the reason why senior nutrition tends to suffer is because, well, nobody likes eating alone. Like it's just not fun. And so having someone there that can prepare a meal, but actually sit with them and enjoy the meal together is a big, big deal. And so that second example is the family that kind of says, we're going to put some maintenance care in place. There's not a dire major need. Like this person kind of does okay, but a couple of things happen. So now you have now you maybe have 3 days a week of services, and you've got kind of a normal picture of what normal looks like for this person. And so that caregiver being in there 3 times a week, if they show up on a Monday and this client is like not doing well, they can easily pick that up, that's not their normal. They normally are like this, and today they're really out of it. Maybe they have a mental kind of a brain fog, or something's going on, or they're saying something that doesn't make sense. Like those kinds of things are a big deal. Kind of similarly, like we talk about, cars. There's certain things you need to do to maintain, to basically keep your car running. This is kind of like that, to make sure that um, you've got some care in place, helping with appointments, helping to take your load off a little bit, but also having where the family can have peace of mind that somebody's in there, they're basically helping with some things, and then they can kind of be the eyes and ears if something is not going exactly right. So those are kind of a couple of different examples, but that first example I'm sorry, the second example where the maintenance care is brought in is more of an exception than the norm, because typically people do have to scramble after a crisis, and the need is more dire, so there isn't a lot of like back and forth. But I will tell you that someone who puts in maintenance care can, we've had many clients who've been with us on services for more than 10 years, where they start out with very little, and then slowly, as their needs change, they increase the care. And so I encourage families always to start these conversations early, because you need to build some of that trust to, because at some point, again, you will need to help figure out finances. You're going to want to become a power of attorney, because you will need to help protect them from the potential scams and other things that are out there. So you will need to play that role, and you need to build that trust. Not that we don't trust one another, but like we've never talked about finances, and one day you walk in and you're like, okay, today I want to get on your bank accounts, and I want to make sure that you're okay, right? That's going to be like, whoa, 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 what's going on? So that trust and that logic is going to have to get built, and you need to do that. You also need to understand that emotionally it's a very sensitive topic for them, because this is talking about their vulnerability. None of us want others to know how vulnerable we are. And lots of times, even before our family, and this is probably more true for men, we will try to minimize or hide the struggles that we're having, because we just don't want people to see that we have weaknesses. And so understand that and come with the utmost compassion for the person. Don't push beyond what they're comfortable getting into with you. And sometimes it's, the setting is a thing to think about, because if you're at a family function and you want to bring that up and there's too many people there, that's probably not the right place to have that. Maybe you do. Maybe you grab coffee. Maybe you invite your mom and dad to a lunch, and start broaching that subject and start talking about it. But anyway, I would love to share this information with you. We have a whole guide that has a ton more detailed information that I will have in the description of this video. I would love to hear your comments. I would love to hear questions. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe even topics that you'd like to hear more about, as far as the care or caregiving, or anything senior care related. So I'd love to be able to answer those, and maybe make some videos based on the questions that you're submitting. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here. And till next time.